John, imagine trying to be a natural farmer and living in a place where the granddaddy of the Ohio plantations. It's pretty fun, right? You could do that.
Yeah, a lot of issues hinge through our dining room table. Okay. It was cool, I'm winning.
No, but his dad is really into Korean natural farming. He went to Korea, he took classes, and he knows it works.
Yeah. I think if he practiced a little bit more, he would open up his heart and he would get more into it. Well, you forgot. Sure. Yes, there you go. Keyword. Yeah.
This is a good class.
Yeah.
This is the best group ever. We don't solve your whole problem, we'll solve everyone's problem. Okay.
Yeah, so what I got up here is the IMO. These are the workers. You know, like we collect them from the forest on a simple starch. And you guys probably did that with the rice. You know? And so you get the moldy rice. That's your IMOs. Then you put them out into your field. So what this SP up here means is soil preparation. So this is when I've gone and maybe cleared my field, and I want to now get ready to introduce a crop into it. So I'm going to start with my soil preparation. So this column here coming down is what you would use, and everything with a check mark is what you would use to do your soil preparation. So the IMO is a big part of the soil preparation because those are the guys you want to get into the soil and get working for you. The rest of these things down here are going to act as foods, something for the microbes to eat, to give them the nutrients they need so they can be established into their new home. You know, like you put them out there, you know, you can send the military out with MREs, you know, you don't send them out and just let them go, send them with food. So these are basically the food and the meals ready to eat for them. So the first thing that we would feed our IMO once we put it out there, we send them with Oriental Herbal Nutrient, the OHN. And what this is medicine. So we send them out there with medicine. So, you know, whatever issues they get, you know, being a pioneer, being out there is kind of hard, so you want to have the best medicine with you. So, and then the other attribute that this has is it really helps with digestion. So these microbes are going to go out there and start to eat the soil and process it into soluble nutrients. You want to help them with digestion. So we include OHN with it. The next thing up here is BRV, which is brown rice vinegar. Which vinegar, what it does is it helps to start to dissolve the rocks. Like you know when you add vinegar, it starts to bubble baking soda. So same thing, that same thing with bubbling action starts to physically dissolve the rocks. So this is I'm going to call it a catalyst. Because it starts to dissolve the rocks from, but the other thing it helps to do is also like if I had a nutrient here and then like in the case of the fertilizer where I put the fertilizer out and then after 2 weeks it calcifies, it's going to take these two compounds, which was your fertilizer plus the calcium that's now on there that makes it not water soluble, and it's going to break that apart. And so it starts to free up any free nutrients. Like it kind of frees things, it gets things flowing. And that's why I call it a catalyst. Helps to dissolve, helps the things to start to break apart and they can rejoin the different things all in your soil here. The next thing that you would add into your soil prep is the fermented plant juice, which this really acts as a food. It's one of the most nutritious foods. It's already pre-digested by being fermented already, so the microbes can just eat it right away. It just goes right into them, they're healthy, they're ready to go. So food, send it out with them. The next thing on this list here, it's a fermented fruit juice. Whereas this one all over here is a plant juice coming across, and it's a fruit juice when it's actually fruiting. But I'll get to that part. And so the next thing when I'm doing my soil prep is I'm going to add in an LAB, which this is the lactic acid bacteria. And these guys, I describe them as your emergency workers. So that's like your police, your firemen, your traffic control guys, like your guys that are really helping out. And so they go in and if there's any problem in the soil, they help to alleviate that. They help to make sure everything happens smoothly when you introduce your IMOs in. The thing about emergency workers is they're good and they're great, but we only want so many of them. Like if we had a policeman at every corner, that might be good, but it's probably going to be really expensive too. So these guys, they're good, but they also eat a lot and they cost a lot to use. So that's their role. The next thing on this list is the fish amino acid. And this is the fuel. So they go into the ground, they can start their generators up, they have the fuel they need to get and go and do the things they need to do. So again, with the fuel, you want to be careful, just like with the emergency workers. If you add too much fuel, the thing can just burn, right? Burn your plants when you add too much of this. So you want to add the right amount of fuel. You want some, not too much. This is also important in the beginning a lot, but then as your plant starts to grow, it produces its own fuel. So in the beginning, it's important to provide it, but as you keep growing, you don't need it as much.
It looks like it's under here. Right? Nitrogen?
Yeah, but as the plant grows, in the beginning, it can't do that for itself. But eventually, it'll start to synthesize its own amino acids, which fish amino acids. And amino acids are basically the building blocks of DNA. So if you want it to build and replicate and grow real fast, put out a lot of leaf, put out a lot of solar panel, you add this, the FAA, to fuel that growth. So let's skip over these two for now and go down to this one, which is seawater. And so this acts as your minerals. The sea, everything, all the minerals from the earth wash down the rivers and end up in our ocean. So you go down there, you grab a little bit of ocean water, and you're getting all your trace nutrients. You get cobalt, copper, all these things that your soil may be deficient in. You can go grab it from the ocean, put it out there. When you dilute it 1 to 30, you have the salt is not an issue. Just like when you get an IV into your blood, the thing has a little bit of salt in it. Same thing with this. When you dilute it 1 to 30, that little bit of salt is actually good. And all those minerals you get right back out of the ocean. So this helps them to establish themselves. Minerals, like rock minerals and minerals, because people use that as just a straight up fertility solution. They'll just take like crushed rock and those minerals and use that. But here for us, we can use the ocean. It's real close to where we're farming, dilute it properly, put it out there. Helps to fluff up your soil. Because otherwise the soil is stacked too tight, like plates stacked. When you put ocean water, it's like taking golf balls and tennis balls and putting those inside the plates. And those plates, instead of just sitting flat, now has a golf ball inside. So when you have that golf ball, now you can get air and water to flow through your soil. Whereas before the stack plates was too tight to let that go through. So the minerals really helps to pump up the soil and get things flowing in there.
So basically like perlite. But without minerals.
Unlike no, because perlite you're making airspace on like where we can see it type level.
Yeah.
What's happening on this is on micro level. Like it's on such a tinier, smaller level that it has that same benefit, but even more so because it's so tiny.
What about all the bad stuff that runs into the sea? The chemical stuff from conventional agriculture, like none of that gets in your. I mean, it's there, right? So you're just saying that it's better, but even though you're getting some of the bad stuff from conventional agriculture in the seawater.
Yeah, I talk to my kids a lot about that we're basically living in a toxic swamp these days.
Yeah.
So no matter where you go, you're going to get contaminants, and that's why you're including the IMOs. Because the IMO's main job is to alleviate that. They take it and they'll take it where it's running around like this free radical is running around, and they'll tie it into a carbon, which is like putting it in a maximum security prison. And then the thing can't move and it can't mess up your plants. It's frozen. So it's all about getting carbon in your soils, it's about getting the microbes to move those things into the carbon. It's about building soil depth.
Mushrooms will keep heavy metals, and like even if you have lead or something like that, the mushrooms will capture the lead, and you can even eat the mushrooms without getting sick because of how it handles the stuff. So mushrooms are really good. And the thing about Roundup isn't like, it's that it has so many chlorines on it. And chlorine, you probably know this when I was saying, chlorine is really aggressive at like ripping apart other molecules, So because it has like, what, 7 chlorines on it or something like that, and it's just like a big ring of chlorine. So it tears stuff apart, that's how it works. But the thing is that it tears apart like anything it comes into contact with. So like if you guys don't overspray as much as like on the mainland, they're gonna have fields where they're just dosing it maximum dose all the time. And then like they get super weeds that are resistant to it and all that kind of crazy stuff. And then like all the stuff in the water gets all messed up, and it's still not really like ideal or something to use it, but I'd say that they probably use it in a much more reduced fashion than, because you guys are also trying to save money too.
Yeah, the Muellers over there, the hog farm, that they take all the manure from their hog shit and spread it and kill it into the soil. I used to have to do that. And by using all the hog manure, that they actually found out they had way less weeds. And yeah, they just saturate the ground.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing is just to like, like this is one system, and just to like learn what's useful for you guys, and like, cause I think we all know that we have to make the transition. We can't afford to use farmers at this point. It's not like you can just be like, no, go get off the land. It doesn't make sense. So.
Yeah, and from where I stand, I understand like we're all trying to make it and we're all going our different ways. I want to give you this perspective, and I know you guys will probably end up getting some hybrid of what I'm talking about, and that's totally cool. Like and the cool thing about this is that this is just going to make everything else you're doing better. It's totally compatible with everything. Like I said, my dad uses the Roundup, he grows amazing stuff. It's all like I sometimes like wish we just had a clean, pure planet, but I understand where we're all at. I used to ride a bike and now I drive a car, so it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, Brian's gonna get to do the pure farm, on my farm, so. So we're gonna have both, all kinds.
Yeah, no, and I totally get that. So does this make sense here when I'm doing my soil prep? Right, I basically put my microbes and then I fed them all these cool things to really help them get in. Food, medicine, catalyst, food, emergency workers, fuel, and minerals. Now it seems like pretty much everything you would need, right, to go out and to do something. So same thing with the microorganisms. I give them all these tools. So the soil prep, typically what I do is soil prep about 2 weeks before I'm going to plant. And that gives the microbes time to get into it. You can also do it right as you're planting. It's fine. But the more you set them up, then when you put your plants in, they're just going to plug into your plants and start feeding them right away. Plants don't got to struggle. Where are my friends? It's like they're there. They're already ready for them. So that's why you do soil prep about 2 weeks to a month before you can start putting all this out there. And I would treat twice typically. So what we get out there, we clear the area, we put the wood chips down, then we treat once. The next week we treat again with all these things in there. And then we started planting into it.
Okay, so when you get someone, or too heavy, you're brewing all that up, what kind of ratio are you talking about, say gallons or so per acre or something like that?
So all the ratios are on this side here. And so essentially it's either 1 to 500 or 1 to 1,000, which I have a spreadsheet that I put this on so that you can tell me the gallons you'd like to make, and I can just type that into here. It's in, if you have numbers it'll work. Okay, yeah. So for instance here, the recommended is about 100 gallons to an acre for a soil drench. It's 25 gallons to an acre for foliar spray. So just to let you know, 100 gallons, essentially if I'm diluting 1 to 1,000, that's 12 ounces, 12, 13 ounces.
It's like a coffee cup.
If I'm diluting that 1 to 500, that's 25 ounces. So just to give you an idea of how much I'm talking about with these things.
So the ratio that would just be for whatever amount of acres or, that's the ratio. Basically,
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much land you're doing, but you have this conversion that tells you exactly how much.
Our gallons, because we usually work in gallons. I have a 250 gallon tote that I take the compost tea back and forth with, for example. Or,
Yeah, so
we have a
250
50
gallons, 32
gallon
ounces.
Right.
32 and 64, that's really easy. If you do 250 gallons, it's really easy. It's 32 and 64.
Awesome. So 64 is like a big goal.
Yeah. It's a big goal. Yeah.
And also,
So you're doing, let's say if you're doing a heavy drain, that's a thing.
Yeah.
So,
you don't increase it? Is that what you're asking?
no, when you're doing a very heavy drain, when you do the first application, right, when you first work in the soil.
Yeah, that's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out, you talk about, I know we get numbers here, it's not,
Well, it's a heavy drench here. If you were to fill at 250 total, you'd be able to do 2.5 acres. And your amount of inputs at diluted 1 to 1,000, so the ones up here that say 1 to 1,000 and stuff, would be 32 ounces of each of these. Okay, and then this one here would be a 64 ounce into that 250 to do 2.5 acres. Yeah.
So we're gonna put all that into one container.
Yeah, you put that in one container.
you blend that out.
Yeah, mix that up, and then
So it's
So-
like 100 gallons an acre?
for a heavy drench,
Yeah.
if you were to do foliar spraying with that, you would be able to do 10 acres. It's 25 gallons per acre.
And the The manager what he's doing with the brewing, with the water out there, is that we don't have to go to HFM and buy wheat mill run anymore. We just do it by the water. You don't have to buy all that stuff.
You're right, but
Yeah.
but we're working with, trying to get that fungus and stuff going, and that's what we the mill run to raise fungus, we put in.
Yeah, but actually you can just keep it in that gooey form of the sugar and just bubble it in the compost. And it'll survive in the sugar.
So
If you want to grow it
this
out
is
some
my
more,
IMO here.
you want to grow it out some more.
That's
You know, because I have that
That's
jar over there with the glue in the bottom. That's like that. And then that'll survive for years.
Yeah.
And you can just, if you want to grow out some more, just mix it with some rice and it'll grow out, and then mix it with the sugar again.
recollected each time, don't,
Recollect it.
Yeah, you'd be lowering the number ratio
Right,
than you
yeah.
by doing that, by adding water in.
Genetically.
Yeah, it's better to recollect, like, by the time I've gone through a jar that size, it's kind of recollect. Although you guys are probably doing larger
Smelling
acres.
is,
So
it's very familiar smell.
We're just concerned about
It smells like, actually,
like,
bubble.
yeah.
That's been fermented for a while. I know this sounds sick, but that's what exactly it's called.
You can crush
Kind
these
of
out and
big,
you would be
fat,
fine.
extra lots of grain and proteins and stuff like that to the food. Because, yeah, that's a weird familiar smell.
If you feed a lot of grease to the pig, because you gotta build them up.
Oh, yeah.
That's why you get all that good
It's
stuff.
like noodles.
And lots of sugar.
Did you stop?
Yeah.
No.
Is it still?
The grain, come on.
Something with a cold.
I know that's my original. I thought I heard it. Okay, so I went over soil prep. So now what I'm going to do is go over the 3 major life stages that you would want to make a mix for. Those are leaf, flower, and fruiting. So when you're initially trying to grow leaf, growth, when your plant starts to differentiate and put out flowers, and then once your fruit starts to form and fruits are forming on your tree, are these 3 different stages. And so so I'll start with the leaf. And in fact, I'm gonna start with all these. And you see this green line right here? I kind of drew it so it'd be easier to see my table, but also this first green line, you see how they're all the same across. Essentially right here I'm changing this to fermented fruit juice, but essentially all these are the same. I'm using my medicine, I'm using my catalyst, and I'm using my food. So no matter where I'm at, if I have a leaf, flowering, or fruiting, no matter where my plant is at, I can use the medicine, the vinegar, and the food. All always. And what that's called is, this upper part is the maintenance spray.
Now, can you overfeed it?
If you're in these dilutions, no. If I diluted it too strong, like I pour a whole bunch in, yes, you can overfeed it in that sense. But if I dilute it this way and I spray it onto my plant, you can't overfeed it. You may get overgrowth though. Gil in the Philippines was telling a story about how he told his worker to spray it once a week. The guy misheard, he sprayed it every day.
Oh.
So when he came back from his month trip, his produce was too big to sell. Like all the stuff, it was too big, it wouldn't fit in the box. Like what used to be like 4 or 5 was 1. And so you can, super max your plants out this way. I've never done that because I don't spray as frequently as I should. But yeah, you can't overdose them, but you can't overgrow them.
We saw that tomatoes, the
One
tomatoes, that
overgrows.
fish amino acids.
You can't overgrow it, it's not, you know, how small that is, one whole pot.
And guys saw the fish amino acids in
Yeah. No, if you're gonna sell and process your stuff, the more you use this, the more you can.
Like cocoa, you know, how many it takes an acre to produce, huh?
Yeah.
Very small, you can abuse, wow, you can really get cocoa going.
Yeah.
It's one of those,
Oh, it's huge. I think, especially here, it's not big off.
Like you say, you under spray, I mean, that's maybe they would overspray unless you want to keep something. So, I mean, like what you're doing, like, so you didn't spray enough, but it's really better. I mean, you can still get what you want, right? I mean, pretty much.
Yeah, and I don't sell the stuff. Like I grow for it to eat, and I grow here for education, so I'm not selling. So the cost benefit of like how much to spray versus how much return, I don't necessarily have the best data on that. But what's recommended is spraying every 7 to 11 days. That's
You
just
figure you get out, 7 days.
and that's because every 7 to 11 days, typically most plants are putting on a new leaf, or they're doing some change is happening there. And so just coming back with a spray helps to keep that process flowing smoothly. Is it clear kind of on this maintenance spray, which is this upper part?
So why are you not addressing the root systems with something like this? See, like you got, like leaf flower, fruit, nothing for
So you're very correct on this. And what this middle one here is flower and root.
because if you don't feed the roots, you're going to have a lack of uptake from the soil and stuff. In other words, it should be going foliar only kind of thing.
Yeah. But the roots are really going to be taken care of by your IMO, which was put in during your soil preparation. That's really going to take care of the roots, extend them millions of miles further when they move into those fungal networks. And this middle spray here, which is the flower, is also really good for the roots. So if you're going to grow a root crop, this is also the other one, the flower one is in a root crop, you don't really go for this fruit one, it's more of this. So it's more of a root. And that's a good distinction to make.
Okay, so let's take the looking at the coffee, and then you already got coffee trees growing, but you want to just go ahead and introduce IMO into it to try to, kind of accurate like thought type of thing. What would be kind of thing would you apply? Would be a one-shot deal, or would you apply it for what you use like that?
I would put the IMO out, like, I would do this soil prep spray for about a month. So maybe 4 times each week until that month, you spray it those 4 times, and then you're gonna have the IMOs into your soil at that point. And then you will switch more to these, which are maintenance sprays.
Which is applicable for whatever season it is.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying you don't have to do it every so often, it's a maintenance thing. Or as you spray it, or whatever drips on the ground.
Yep. Okay, so if we see the maintenance spray is common between all 3 of these. So now I'm going to go and talk about the leaf spray. and the difference between this one to these three. So in our leaf spray, when we're spraying it, the difference here is that we include the LEV, which are the emergency workers, because during the leaf it's still rapid growth, lots of things are happening, so it's important we have the emergency workers in there. They help the other microbes, they help the leaves even get bigger size. People like, this is typically in EM, and they use that as a growth booster for leaves. So I'm going to include them in there. And then when I really wanted to grow leaves, I'm going to include my fuel, because that really helps to grow the solar panels. Like I was saying, really helps that rapid leaf growth happen over here. So I'm going to include LAB and FAA in addition to my maintenance spray to grow when I want my plant to grow leaves. So if I look at my plant and I think, wow, like this thing needs a little bit more leaf to it, that's when I mix this mixture up, which is this leaf spray, include these things in there, and it's going to encourage the plant to put out more leaf. Now if I overspray it, and I overspray this too much onto my plant and it has too much leaf and it starts to become like obese, like it's too much, then I switch to this flower and root spray, which this one helps it to grow out, this one helps it to grow up and add like structure. You can think of this one as the meat and this next one as the skeleton, the bones underneath. And so these two can balance each other. You can alternate between these based on what you're seeing in your plants and what you want to have happen. And when we actually use these in usage, you kind of start, like if this is the beginning of my plant here, and this is the end of my plant here, in the beginning, this first part here, I'm going to do my soil prep here before I even start. I'm going to plant my plant. In the beginning here, I'm going to do the leaf for a while until the plant kind of gets up to be decent size. I'm going to do the leaf. Then from this section to this section, I'm going to alternate between the leaf and the flower. I'm going to alternate. So like every other week, I would spray one, then the other. So I alternate between. Then once I notice it's really setting flower, and it's really in its flowering stage, like it's to that point, then I'm going to switch to the flower and do that flower spray. Then once it starts to set fruits, and I can physically see the fruits, like, it's not just the flowers, like the fruit is starting to form, then I'm going to switch over to my fruit spray. And in this section right here, I would alternate between flower and fruit. So you're kind of alternating between, and if you notice in this case where it's out here and it looks like, oh, my plant's a little skinny, like it could use a little bit, then you can throw a leaf in there, a little bit, leaf spray, to kind of add that in. But this is just in general. I start with a leaf, and I kind of alternate between, then when it's distinctly in this stage, then I add just the flower. Then when it's transitioning again, I kind of alternate between, and if it needs, I can add a little leaf into it. And then when it's really fruiting, I just go with my fruits. So, do we recommend alternating rather than blending? Yeah. So, because one week and then the next week. Because, like I said, that this one, the leaf and the flower are kind of balances. Like if I overleaf, then I got a flower. And if I overflower, then I got a leaf. And so if you combine those two, they cancel each other out. But you can alternate, like this week that week that, and then that will help to get this optimal growth. So is that kind of clear on the leaf? Basically, I'm adding the LED, emergency workers, and fuel to really help them grow fast. That gives me the leaf. So the difference on the flower and the root spray and this also for like sweet potatoes and root crops, you would want to use this root spray, is that I'm going to add my maintenance spray plus water-soluble calcium phosphate. And the phosphorus is a key component of root growth, and phosphorus is also a key component of flowering and flower formation. And so adding this water-soluble calcium phosphate is that it's water-soluble, which means as soon as I spray it onto my plant, it goes directly and it starts working. There's other types like rock phosphate and most things that you put into the ground that have to be processed and then taken up by the root system, and it may take weeks for you to see results. Whereas this is already water soluble, you spray it on your plant leaf, it's going to go to work immediately. So you can really help your plant out by adding that phosphorus to it when it's flowering to get that extra, the minerals it needs there. You can also in this stage include phosphoric acid, which is made different ways, and I'm not going to really get into that at this point. But if you have ways like Coca-Cola, lots of phosphoric acid in it. You can spray Coca-Cola at this stage, and it'll really help your plant. So that's basically, so you see the difference between these is that this one had the LAB and FAA, this one has the calcium phosphate. So you're getting calcium along with phosphorus. And so these are kind of opposites of each other. Now, if my plant is in the fruiting stage, I'm going to again include this maintenance spray of the medicine, the tablets, and the food, but I'm going to switch my food up from being from the plant growing tips to actually being from fruits. So I go ferment banana, papaya, and squash together. Like the ESP is one of the great ones. So you can take the bunch of squash, the bananas, the papayas, and mush those with sugar. And just like how you make the fermented plant juice, you make that from a fruit. And because it's from the fruit, now it's going to have all those fruit minerals to put into your plant. It's going to make it want to put out bigger and better fruits. So the food is coming from that to encourage that growth behavior. So that's the only difference up here in the maintenance spray is where I got my fruit from, or my ferment from. And then it comes down to here, down at the bottom, where when you want it to put out nice fruits, you don't need the calphos. You want the calcium, just straight up water-soluble calcium. And what calcium helps the plant to do is to grab all the sugars and energy that it's put out in its leaf, and then it's stored in the plant, and it helps to change those forms from being like different plant things into sugars. And it helps to translate those into sugars, which then go into your fruit, which makes your fruit sweeter, bigger, better, all those things. So a lot of times if you grow these big, magnificent plants, but then they don't put out good fruit, it's because it's a lack of calcium to transfer that growth now into that fruiting. So calcium, I'll just write this over here, it's a fruit maker. Fruit transfer.
So is there a better place to get the brown rice vinegar to make that? Because buying little bits of it, little bitty bottles, like this is not that efficient, right? Is he making it?
What I recommend to do is to make a lot of banana vinegar. Because we have bananas are a locally available resource for us. Bananas are very similar to rice in terms of the rice grows up, puts out little things. Banana grows up, puts out little things. They're both, the banana is just a huge rice. And so you can make banana vinegar. You take bananas, mush it, mix it with 1/3 sugar, whatever volume you had, add twice as much water to it, and let that sit. You can add a mother into it from another vinegar that you already have, and then it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to turn that from water into vinegar. Vinegar, then you'll have plenty of it. You know, you can go pick up whole bananas anywhere, just any whole bananas around. And so that takes a waste product and now makes it a resource for you.
Now, does the bananas have to be ripe or can they be green?
It's better with the riper ones just because the sugars are more available.
The one ready to stop.
Yeah, you don't want it to be too big.
Yeah, that's right. It's gotta make plenty of vinegar, fermentation.
Yeah, really easy to make vinegar on the farm, and then you have vinegar because you can use that here as instead of the brown rice vinegar, the banana vinegar is the same and as good. So not only to dissolve your bones and cow carb or eggshells, but to use it as a straight up catalyst part of it.
Can you talk about that?
I've got your phone. It's recording.
It's a chicken watering thing. No, I just want to make sure.
Yeah. So again, the calcium transfer that into our fruits, convert those sugars, make it real sweet, really nice. You can increase the sweetness of your fruit by putting this on. And the cool thing is that it's water soluble and absorbable. So even that banana rock that I have that's hanging outside, that's already cut off my plant, I can spray this with the water soluble calcium. It's going to go in there, and as it ripens, it's going to make it sweeter. The other thing it's going to do is, a lot of times these bananas break and split, and by spraying the water-soluble calcium on there, it's going to help harden that, and so you won't have as much splitting in your fruit, which sometimes is an issue for like lychee. If you pick it in the morning and it's too much water in there, it splits. You know? And so you can spray the water-soluble calcium on it even after you've harvested it, and it helps to strengthen that skin.
You can do that in a coffee tank.
You can also spray a little bit of vinegar diluted at 1 to 500 on harvested fruit, and that helps to preserve its shelf life. It'll get you an extra, a couple days to a week to more if you spray a little vinegar on the outside. So as a post-treatment harvest, you could use the brown rice vinegar or banana vinegar plus the calcium on stuff that's already come in to strengthen and harden and preserve that better. So the next thing on the fruiting, with the maintenance spray, the calcium, is also seawater. And a lot of times, like when they're harvesting sugarcane, for instance, they'll spray Roundup on it about a week before they harvest to stress the plant out so it gets sweeter and has more sugar content, which to me is crazy because then you're just going to keep that and it's still on there. But you can do this with seawater, and the seawater does the same thing. You can start with 1 to 30 about 2 weeks before you harvest. The next week you go out there, you can dilute it 1 to 25. And then right before you harvest it, like the day before you harvest it, you can dilute it 1 to 20. And that helps to stress out the plant a little bit, which puts more sugars into its offspring, because it's like, I'm stressed, I just want to pass this on, let the next generation deal with it. And the seawater also has tons of minerals. And the minerals is what makes fruits and those kind of things taste even better. So the seawater really helps for post-harvest. And I don't know, in coffee, it might help all the aromatics and those types of things. It may increase their volume in there. It's we're trying. I always think of sugars and sweet fruits, but I haven't thought of bitters and those things. But I'm sure it does a similar thing.
Right?
Yeah. You're gonna, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna do all this.
So So, and then the only one that I didn't label up here is kind of the, so to me, the water-soluble calcium phosphate really provides the bones and structure for the plant. So I've kind of named all those here in like words that we're all familiar with and more by the usage and what we want. Whereas most of these are named like how do you make them. And that's just because that's the way it came to us. But I always find it better to name it by like, you know, the medicine, because then you're like, oh, does my plant need the medicine? And that's like the real obvious answer. Versus does my plant need OHN? And you're like, yeah. So I use these names to refer to them a lot, and I try to make it more clear this way. So is this kind of clear on this chart here of what I'm doing, and then how I would use it here? And this varies plant by plant to different things, and figuring out, you know, for your specific case and your weather patterns and what, you know, to use these. But just in general, this is what, you know, like how it would happen and what I'm using. If it is raining a whole lot, like you get a ton of rain that you weren't expecting, one thing you can use is calcium phosphate. And to really, that helps to mitigate too much rain. Whereas, you know, might cause trouble in other ways. This spray, so this flowering spray when it rains too much is a good one to use.
So like, you need nutrient
What about the other way around? When you don't have enough rain? So something to mitigate the lack of moisture or just help out. To keep the plant alive, you know, feeding the plant during say drought period.
Yeah, just basically the maintenance spray during a drought. Not trying to alter too much of the plant's growth and ability, but this maintenance spray during a drought is the one. That really helps, like, during a drought, you want to make sure your microbes, like I was talking about bags of water, you want to make sure there's plenty of them, and this food will really help them stay healthy in the soil. Helps them, you know, have enough food, and then they're happy, and then that helps with moisture.
the fish jar, you can add that to an existing orchard. It doesn't have to go like before you.
Yeah, the tars, yeah, also again, in drought prone areas, the tars and help big time. But you kind of gotta have that out ahead of time. You can just put it out in the drought, but it's not like a.
Oh, yeah.
The Conner Rainforest has had their coffee trees for such a long time, and they only started using fish char last year.
Oh, yeah.
But it still really helps.
Yeah. No, you will get a benefit to existing things. Like I'm saying, one of the main deficiencies in our soil is carbon. Even though, like, you know, it's not on our NPK, I don't ever mention carbon because it kind of was just thought of as a given. You know, that plants produce leaves which has carbon, which is always there, but we've done agriculture so fast, we've used it faster than it's regenerated. Okay, so these are the tools we're using in natural farming. These are the ways we're using them. Now I want to give you a little bit of theory and idea on how you can measure your soil health, and also like how to optimize your soil for the best growth of what you're trying to do. So I have this chart here, which the main thing I'm looking at is bacteria and fungus. And this little thing here means micrograms. So I'm comparing them by weight. So which outweighs the other. So if I go out to a field that's just barren and has been that way for a long time, what I'm going to find when I soil sample is about 10 parts of bacteria and almost no fungus. And what's going to want to naturally live there and naturally sprout is weeds. Because the nitrogen cycle and the carbon cycle are just all disturbed, and basically you're going through this boom and bust, and the weeds are really trying to heal the soil, to bring back the carbon, to, it's like, if you rip your skin off, it's dangerous because you can get infection real easy. And the weeds are just putting a scab over it to try to keep the sunlight from just burning the soil and leaching out the moisture and all these things. So you're just going to find what we consider typically weeds in that condition. And that's what's going to sprout all up and it's going to be happy. As I start to introduce more bacteria, I go get an IMO that I know is more bacterial oriented. And I start to put that in my soil and I start to feed, I start to do the maintenance spray. What's going to happen is the bacteria is going to start to take off more, and get 100 parts of it, and then my fungus will also start to come in. So I'll get 10 parts. So between these, I'm starting to get more life in there. And this is something that you would use if you're growing like lettuces. Lettuces prefer a pretty bacterial environment. Not too much fungus, just a little bit to move nutrients here and there, but they're not actually their roots are not going to work with the fungus. Fungus is just passing things around, they're not actually working together. Lettuce is mostly working with bacteria. Then I move a little bit more up the thing to more advanced plants. I get into my Brassicas, which are like broccolis and those types of kales, cabbages, those types of plants. I would want to put in still more bacteria than fungus, about twice as much bacteria than fungus here. Whereas this one was, this one is 0, this one is 10, this one is 2. Like the ratio between them. This is going to start to help. Again, their Brassicas are heavier feeders. So the fungus is going to help to move more nutrients around, and then the bacteria is primarily what's going to fuel them and what they're working with. But the fungus helps to move the stuff around. And if I have soil conditions like this, like I take IMO and I put this out there, my Brassicas are what's going to want to sprout. My weeds are going to be like, there's not as much healthy for them. Like they don't have as much food available. And so these higher order things are what's going to want to sprout. And as I move further this way, I get into more complex plants, like the taro or sugarcane, any of my bigger things that I want to grow out there. My perennials that are going to be out there all the time. This year, I'm going to want about an equal ratio. So this one is about 1 between them. So these are going to start to plug into this fungal network. You see how 600 is a lot bigger than 250? It's because these guys are going to start to plug in, and the roots are going to start to work with the fungus itself. And the taro is going to, it's going to be better. Like if I have it balanced like this, I'm not going to get those types of things sprouting. These are just going to sprout. And this relates to the nitrogen cycle that I'm starting to get like more, I think, ammonia. I'm not exactly sure on the thing, but my type of nitrogen that's cycling in the ground becomes different. These ones also prefer the fungus because fungus is protein. Just like I'm made of meat, it's a different, the fungus is also made of that same meat, and it's a different type of nitrogen in our soils. It starts to favor these types of plants here. Then when I'm starting an orchard, so I got coffee trees maybe, I got, trees starting to grow, mac nuts, something like that. You're going to want to have more fungus than bacteria. Because trees are really associated with fungus. They like it. That's how they can move the nutrients. They can extend the roots way further that way. And if you start to get your soils so that they're in this ratio, you'll notice there's no more grass growing under your trees. You don't have to mow anymore. The thing is just, this stuff over here doesn't want to grow because it doesn't have those types of foods. You change the type of nitrogen to be more what the tree type of nitrogen wants. And so those guys, they don't want to grow. The weeds, those things, they're not happy. They don't want to be there. Just the trees are going to be happy.
One of the things about Roundup is that it because it needs chelation so much, like fungus gets like all,
Fucks up the fungus.
it messes them up.
It's
So,
really strong.
like, yeah, so like, it turns the soil more bacterial. And so actually it selects for more weeds, even though it's supposed to kill your weeds, it creates the conditions for more weeds. And then the compost tea that I use with you guys, I selected fruits for you guys to use that are favoring the fungus. So like the fish hydrolysate favors fungus over bacteria, and the spirulina algae favors fungus. So I'm trying to like push the compost tea towards a better side for the crop. If you want bacteria, you're going to use like molasses or something.
Similar sugars.
Yeah. Bacteria tends to thrive on sugars because it's fast. Sugar makes you hyper, go fast, right? Fungus tends to go on proteins and more like those amino acids. It's slower to digest. That's why when you eat meat, you're full for a while because it's slower in those systems. And so same with this here. That if you want to push more out this way towards your fungal layer, you want to add more of those types of foods. So when I get to my trees out here, the fungus outnumbers the bacteria pretty heavily. And again, you see it's up here. It's 800 now. So we got pretty high numbers. And when you look through a microscope, you should see one fungus anywhere you scroll on the slide. You should go to a random spot and there should be a piece of fungus there. And then you're basically in this ratio out here, where you got more fungus than bacteria. Because when you look through the microscope, you're going to see bacteria. They're always there. They're always there. You can't tell.
So
You can, but it's hard.
we've been using a product called Mite that we ordered from Simple just to make sure the compost tea is and it's like, it's intense. I mean, it really impressed me up. Like, it really jacks up the
Yeah. Fungus also loves humic acid. So worm tea has tons of humic acid in it. You can get it. Humic and fulvic acids are the main. Fulvic is a subset of humic, but those types, when you run water through compost and it comes out that nice brown color, that cocoa brown color, that's humic acid, and that is by far the best fungal food, and I bet you that's primarily what's in that product, or like a large component of it is probably humic acid.
acid? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
There is. But yeah, and just we've been working on the compost too, just to make sure everything's acid.
So the humic acids and stuff, you can buy that.
Yeah, and it's a lot cheaper to make your own.
And it's actually better when you make your own because it's not synthetic. But actually I studied this in high school in a lab when you synthesize a chemical. Like say it has 5 elements, then it'll look like this. Because you make both sides in the lab, it's like, the chemicals are just combining, so it makes the right hand and left hand. But a plant or an earthworm or whatever's digestive system is only going to make one side. So in fact, they make it, when it's natural, it's actually, they only make the mirror image that's going to be effective. It's like if you had a puzzle piece that was like this, and that was it, you wouldn't be able to put this side into the puzzle piece because it would be like that. It's the same idea. call it a man tumor.
They actually make
It's
it,
totally irrelevant, but whatever.
they make it from leonardite and they use a bunch of acids to break it down, and it's better just to make your own humic acid. Essentially, you know, a simple compost pile, even don't worry about the biology and it's just the fact that the thing reduced down, you're gonna get tons of humic acid. And so this last part over here is the forest. And you'll notice that I now got tons of fungus. The fungus is hugely outnumbering my bacteria. But I still have a fair amount of bacteria on here. And this is why when you go to gather your stuff, your IMO, if you want to get a fungal dominated IMO, this is why you go to the forest to gather it. Because it outnumbers the bacteria by so much that the majority of what's going to populate into your IMO is going to be the fungus. And so a nice, rich, old forest that hasn't been touched for a while, you can go get a nice humus, put your box out there, collect it there, and you're going to get a lot of fungus. So this is like sound good, man. I love it. So this here, based on you, like, there's two relationships. One that you go out to the forest and you find this. The other is that if I can somehow make my field have this ratio, what's going to want to sprout? Forest. Like, these weeds are not interested in sprouting if I can make my soil that way. So a lot of times in farming, we go out and we just plant the trees first, right? Or whatever we're trying to do. But in this case, what we can do is we can make our soil already compatible for what we're planting. And we can go and we can work that underground system first and have that happen for us. So that way we don't have to worry about the weeds because we've already made our soil like balanced. So now when we plant the taro is going to grow. We could plant a ground cover with it, but it's not going to be all Spanish needle and whatever coming up, you know, milkweeds and those things, because they don't have, the biology is not producing the food for them. The nitrogen is already different how it's cycling in the ground. So you can go both ways. You know, you see the, you know, like if you go and look out, like, you know, I always recommend you get a microscope and you look at your soil, but if you go out to some place and you just see weeds growing, you know that's what's happening in the ground. You go out to some place and you see, oh, like corn grass is growing, which is a higher order, like along the lines of Brassica. You know, oh, okay, there's some fungus in there, the hormone is going, and there's some bacteria feeding it. So you can start to see the plants and relate that to then understanding what's happening in the ground, in the biology. Yeah. So any questions on this? Do you have
So you say you can do the check when you go to the forest. What are you looking for? What do you do? You go to the forest, extract this property.
an area where leaf litter has collected for a long time, because then those microbes have been there, they're happy, they've well adapted to that, and they're going to be that way. Also, you know, like mango trees are great to gather under. Like you go and you look and you see like the nicest big tree around and gather from under that one, because you know what's in the soil powering that tree is already the good stuff. So you want to go to the areas that you want is healthy. Is this clear? So this is basically like on the most simple way I can convey natural farming. These are the tools we're using, and then this is what we're trying to do in the ground. And it's basically about the fungus. As we increase the fungus, it becomes more compatible typically with what we're trying to grow. And typically, like if you're out, like Marianne mentioned, you spray Roundup or you till your field, you're gonna go this way. So anytime you do an activity that pushes you this way, you gotta go put more IMO and feed them again to then push you back out here. Get what you need to go this way. And so, you're gonna have to, in your operation, you're gonna have to find where that balance is for you. But to know how, how to control things, but then how to go back to where you want. And I always recommend the more you go out this way and the more you stay out this side, the better and better it's gonna get. If I start incorporating a field where I got trees that are helping me stay out this side, and then I got some other veggies growing on the bottom of it, kind of like more like the permaculture. You got the top story, the understory, these things. It helps you stay out this way, and then you don't have to worry about the weeds. I mean, it's you gotta figure out what works for you for real. But.
And you can see it like when you're looking at a field that's full of weeds. You know that it's going to be a hard time to grow anything in there. You're going to have to do a lot of work to prep it. I mean, that's obvious, right? So, like, everybody knows that.
That's probably why we're doing so much prep work for you guys.
Yeah. That's the fun part, right? Dave was pulling some rocks. They've been pulling rocks like for a month or two.
I've been pulling out the last couple of times my little rocks, my medium-sized rocks, my big rocks.
And
My
Kyle
gold.
yesterday, yeah.
I have a comment on rocks. I read this book called Bread from Stones. It's a great book. It's free on the internet. I recommend you to read it. But essentially what he says is his neighbor was always pulling out rocks, and he always left his rocks in the ground, and he focused on this biological methods, and the fungus dissolves the rocks. And so the rocks are actually, like out here in this soil, we don't have very many rocks, and consequently we don't have very much minerals, because the water goes through that ash and leaches it out. But a rock is like solid minerals. That's what's holding it together, is all those minerals. And rocks are actually like fertilizer. So the guy would take his neighbor's rocks and throw them out in his field, and the rocks would disappear because he was dissolving them with his biology.
So
So,
you guys are producing more fungus out there.
Okay.
By the megaton.
but
It's worth mentioning. It's worth mentioning.
yeah,
I don't think we're gonna run out.
no, there's plenty of rocks. Yeah, no, where you guys? All is nice. Like,
There's plenty of rock.
yeah, more minerals than on here.
No, the only reason we take it off the surface rock is just when she goes to try to mow afterwards, we're not.
Until
Black ground.
we're gonna sell the rubber crops and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
It's for the machines, right? Yeah.
You don't really have an answer for the surface rock, right? Like how you can plant into a surface rock. You know what I mean? Like, unless you add a bunch of something on top of it.
I don't know, they do it in Kona.
Yeah, they
That's
do.
true. Yeah, they have space in between the rocks.
Well, what I've seen is,
Yeah.
what I've seen there is that it's like 2 rocks or 4 rocks, you stick the copper tree in, they put the rock back on and walk away from it.
Yeah, the
And
rocks
it grows.
all those nutrients, and then they're gonna attract lichen, which is gonna break them down. It's like a slow drip of nutrients.
Yeah, and it grows.
That's true.
Go right along.
Right on a rock. Never seen anything like it.
Do you need help with the microscope?
No, so I just want to make sure we're clear with this.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll set up on the computer back there, and I'll go grab a soil sample from where I know it's good. We can look at the IMO itself, and I'll grab a soil just from the yard out there where it's just not as good, just so we can get a comparison and see what we can.
Alrighty.
It's all good.
I'll just chat right through my
Yeah, that's all good. So,
Yeah. Almost.
alright.
I'm gonna keep down here.